Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make Scottish shortbread. This is a rich and buttery flavored shortbread with this tender yet crisp texture. It's really just lovely, and it's very easy to make. You will need a 8-inch, that's 20 centimeter tart pan, like this, with a removable bottom. And then we're just making this by hand. So you will need a large bowl. And it's just mainly 4 ingredients. That's it. It's a shortbread with the butter flavor really comes through here in this shortbread. So you will need 3/4 of a cup, which is 95 grams of a white all-purpose flour, plain flour. And to that, I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup, that's 30 grams of, I'm using a white rice flour. Now, rice flour is a gluten-free flour, just made from either white or brown rice. I'm using the white rice flour. Now, nowadays you can find this in most grocery stores or health food stores. It's usually sold in a bag, and you can, in your grocery store, I've found that either on the baking aisle or in the health food section. Now, if you can't find rice flour, just substitute with 1/4 cup of either a cornstarch, or you may know that as corn flour. And the rice flour adds a really nice, gives it that tender crumb and makes it kind of crumbly and crisp. Really, it really adds a lot of texture to the shortbread. And then I'm adding 1/4 of a cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. And then we're going to use half a cup of butter. You can use either salted or unsalted. I'm using unsalted, so I'm going to add 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. If you're using salted butter, which is fine here, you can just leave that salt out. So I'm just going to whisk that together. And then, like I said, half a cup, 113 grams of butter. Now, there's only basically 4 ingredients here. We're not even adding any vanilla extract. So what you want to do is use, good quality ingredients, and use mainly what we're really going to taste in this shortbread is the butter. So try to use a butter with a lot of flavor. There's a lot of either domestic or foreign brands in your grocery store. So whatever your favorite is, use that. Now you want the butter to be cold, really cold. In fact, what I do is I just pop half a cup, I just put it in a plastic bag and just put it in the freezer the night before I'm going to make the shortbread, because frozen makes it even better. Because what we're going to do, this is a little different than most, we're going to grate the cold butter over the flour. And this really gives it that really crisp, crumbly texture, kind of melt in your mouth shortbread. So just use your grater. I'm just using a box grater. You can use those hand microplanes. And on the, fairly big, just, it's a little time consuming, but just grate it over the top. If it's frozen, it's a lot easier to grate your butter. Okay, and make sure you get the butter out from inside there. As you can see, when you grate the butter, it makes a lot. Okay, so now we're going to work the butter into the flour mixture with our fingertips. Now, if you want, you could use a pastry blender and just work it that way, but I just like the feel of it with my fingers. Use your fingertips, and we're just pick it up and just kind of work it into the flour. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. Just work it in, and we're not going to make a ball of dough. We're just going to make it until it's just starts to hold together, like crumbs. And then when you put this in the oven, as it bakes, the butter will melt, and that's what gives you that just lovely texture to this shortbread. You will notice a difference doing it this way from other types of shortbread. So you can see I'm just working it with my fingers. Like I said, you could, if you had a pastry blender, you could just do it this way as well. It's kind of nice to work it with your hands. If you like, you probably could add some vanilla, but I just like it the way it is, with that real nice buttery flavor to it. And if you have, tend to have warm hands, you could even pop your flour and your rice flour in the fridge to make that really cold. Kind of want it to start to hold together. Okay, so just take your tart pan, and because there's so much butter in here, you really don't need to grease your pan. And then just kind of even it out, pat it into place. I know it kind of looks like, how will this ever make like a solid shortbread, but it does. That butter melts as it bakes, so don't worry about that. It'll all come together. So just pat it down nice and firm, kind of get around the edges of your tart pan, if you have the fluted edges. Pat it down really nice. So now I'm just going to pop this in the freezer just for it to firm up. And while I do that, I'm going to preheat my oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 150 degrees Celsius. So just pop it in the freezer 10-15 minutes. Okay, so now take your tart pan, and I like to put it on a larger baking sheet just because it's a lot easier to transport in and out of the oven. And then what we're going to do is score or mark the top of the shortbread using a sharp knife. And when you score, it means to just lightly take your knife and don't cut all the way, like right to the bottom of your shortbread. Just a little way down. And what this does is, as the shortbread bakes, it allows the gases to be released, which means, have you ever, I don't know, I'm sure you've made shortbread where the top kind of puffs up, gets kind of bumpy. When you score like this, that prevents that from happening, or we hope it does. So I'm going to do this into 16 wedges. So like I said, don't do it all the way through to the bottom of the shortbread, just part way down. And don't worry if it kind of flakes a bit like that, because as I said, as it bakes, that butter all melts down. You get a solid shortbread. If you would prefer like 8 wedges instead of, these are small. If you want large, you don't have to cut it this much, but. And then take a fork and then just kind of push holes. Just lightly press all the way around. Make sure we don't get a real bumpy surface to our shortbread as it bakes. Okay, so Now into the oven, somewhere between 40 and 50 minutes depending on your oven. What you're looking for is it to become like a very light golden color, kind of like a biscuit color, and that's how you know it's done. Okay, our Scottish shortbread is now done. See, it's a nice biscuit color. I'm going to let this cool for a few minutes and then we will cut it into wedges. So I let this cool a few minutes, and now with a sharp knife, what I'm going to do is just cut along those lines that we made before we baked the shortbread, and cut all the way through this time. You want to do this while the shortbread is still quite warm. Okay. So now just let this cool completely before you take the sides of the tart pan away. And then what you get is this really nice wedges of shortbread that are really nice, crisp, and very tender, melt in your mouth texture. You can cover and store these for a few weeks. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.